Oh, snap. Welcome to the Sloppy Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ramey. In this week's episode, I'm going to kind of pick up almost where I left off last week. If you remember last week, we talked about World War One and its influences to modern horror. And all those films that came out in the 20s and just pretty much any time after World War One. So today, I want to talk to you guys about a big name in that time frame, and honestly, a big name now. A big name to all actors, to all makeup artists, directors, screenwriters. It's an influence to myself and to, many others. This person we'll be talking about is a man of 1,000 faces, Mr. Lon Chaney. Now, some of you people are going to know some of the topics on some of my episodes, and that's okay, because I'm not giving the deepest history lesson on each thing, but my whole goal for you guys is to just kind of think about it. Do some research on your own. I want you guys to maybe get an interest for it, kind of like I do. I got too much shit in my brain, figure I can give it to you. I wish it would work like that, but it does not. But there are many people who set up the foundations and the pillars for the movies that we go and watch today. And not just scary, but that's the main topic of this show, is just horror, but some of these people coincide with all genres. But Mr. Lon Chaney, this man, what he's done for films in general, for horror, I can't even put words on it. Some of you are, like I said, you probably are more than familiar with who Lon Chaney is, especially people who are well educated in the genre. I myself, I'm what you call a haunt actor, so in Octobers I go and scare the shit out of people when I can. Been doing that for quite some time, and when I haunt and when I design my characters, Lon Chaney is, he's always in the back of my mind. Shit, he's in the front of my mind. I know for a fact that most horror directors, special effects artists, they credit Lon Chaney for being one of their main influences. Many. Too many to quote. I'm going to kind of show you guys, if you are unfamiliar with who Lon Chaney is, who he is, some of his films, and just some of the crazy shit I've run into and heard about with him. So this man, he was a pioneer. He was the Godfather of special effects. You don't have CGI or computer graphic, or you don't have that stuff back in the 1920s. So Lon Chaney, let's go ahead and get into him a little bit, and I can kind of tell you. This man, he was born in the 1880s. Okay, he was born in 1883 to two deaf parents. So that's a cool fact about Lon Chaney. He has two deaf parents. And if you don't know who Lon Chaney is, that might not mean something to you, but if you know who Lon Chaney is, it makes a lot of sense. Most of the movies he starred in were silent films. And if you've ever watched a silent film, to be an actor in that era, you kind of had to be an over actor. You had to be somebody that was, you just had to be a bit more animated. And that's definitely what Lon did. But the great part about Lon was that he did it and he was believable. He was animated but believable. He was honest. One of my favorite actors, actually my favorite actor of all time, is Jack Nicholson. And he's another guy that ties in with somebody like Lon Chaney. And just think of Jack Nicholson's face. So if you're unfamiliar with Lon Chaney, think of Jack Nicholson and how he does his faces. How he doesn't have to say anything, but you can read exactly what he's saying. Whether it's frightening, loving, so it's a fella to that degree. And then you can almost go the other way with it, like a Jim Carrey. Now, I don't dislike Jim Carrey, but he tends to be very over-animated, kind of overacting. But the great part about Lon Chaney, in the silent film era, he was able to hone in on all those skills that he developed with two deaf parents growing up. I mean, picture having to have an argument with your parents being the only one who can speak and the only one who can hear. I mean, I imagine you would develop ways to express yourself quite quickly. So he started young, as a teenager, working in plays and doing things like that. And he got some good roles, and eventually he hooked up on a decent little role, and he met a wife. And her name was Clava Creighton, and they had a son. And he wasn't doing horror or anything yet. He was kind of doing whatever the hell he could. Still plays and things like that. And this sounds really fucked up, so I'm going to give you guys a little, going a little bit deeper to tell you guys. His wife tried to kill herself with mercury chloride, of all things. Like, what the fuck? That has to be a hell of a way to go out. I looked up into that. That's just crazy. I mean, throwing up blood, mouth lesions, seizures, crazy shit. So she tried to kill herself. I don't really know exactly why or the details, but they break up. And because of the breakup, Lon decides that he wants to go further. He can't stay here and do this play, obviously, with her anymore. They work together. They were both working on the play. And he's not going to do that, so he finds himself a new gig. He tries to go and find some movies. And he teams up with the director, actually a man and a wife, and they start cranking out films. And the great part about Lon was he was so used to changing characters. So the monsters aren't born, they are created. Obviously, that's a popular saying in our community. And this is just the perfect cocktail to make what he was. So the deaf parents and the changing roles all the time. Just different characters. And he enjoyed it. He had a passion for it. So once he started to get launched and once he got a shot to go onto the main stage, because like we talked about, there were films in the teens, the 1910s, and there were films. It just wasn't as spread. It wasn't as widespread as it was in the 20s. In the 20s, it really took off. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the films he started to get into and what maybe ways that you would recognize him. So in 1923, he got his biggest critically acclaimed role, or the one that put him on the map. And that was The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Dom, however the hell you want to say it. But he was Quasimodo. And I don't know if you guys haven't seen this black and white silent film of Hunchback. If you haven't seen a picture of this Quasimodo, you really need to look it up. Just look it up on YouTube. Lon Chaney Quasimodo. The makeup on this. So he wore these straps. He wore like a belt around his neck that latched around to other belts that were around his legs that kept him in a hunched position where he couldn't stand upright. They even had a special chair on set that he could sit in when he was on break. So not only did he have that going on, he had a fake eye, like this crazy ass, and this isn't some like little latex eye, this isn't some lightweight. This was like a heavy ass, like a billiard, like a glass ball that he would put over his eye and glue into his eye, and then he'd have this hunch on him, and it was like, I think like a 20 pound. I don't remember exactly what the material was, but I remember it was like 20 pounds, and he'd have it latched on. And he was climbing up a fucking building doing this, and his acting, I mean, you could just feel exactly what he's trying to say, but he's not overdoing it. And that movie, it just messed people up. I mean, and it wasn't just the terrifying part. He just had different parts. I don't know if you guys remember in Leatherface how he would like stick his tongue out the mask and kind of do like a little. Hunchback does that. Lon Chaney does that. And I don't know if that's Leatherface was a nod to that, or I don't know if it's just a feeling you have when you're creepy as shit and a mask on, just to stick your tongue out and do a little. I don't know. But there were just funny scenes, there were terrifying scenes, and it was just a great movie. And at that point, Lon Chaney became a household name. People knew who he was. And that brought him to his biggest role, which was the Phantom of the Opera. And that was 1925. And I'm sure you guys, like I said, some people are listening to this rolling their eyes because they know about Lon Chaney and they know the films, but this is for maybe more or less the people who don't know these things and maybe are current horror fans or kind of more to the genre of when they were born. But if you think of the Phantom of the Opera, which I'm sure you have seen him, and if you haven't, you just look up his picture. So he plays the character Eric, you know, the Phantom in this movie, and the whole movie's got a mask on, and this girl's feeling him, the whole thing. I'm sure you guys have are aware of the concept of the movie. And he said, you know, don't look at my face, don't take my mask off. And while he's playing piano, Curiosity takes the cat, and she takes his mask off. And Lon Chaney, you see his fucking face, the face that terrified a whole century. What set off the monster movies, I feel like. That face, it just set off the whole thing. The special effects that he used, I mean, not even his makeup that he would use, was all like some MacGyver stuff. I mean, he would come up with himself. In this movie, Phantom, he pinned his nose all the way back. I mean, he pulled it up so it's like a pig snout, but it almost just looks like a straight skeleton. And he used fish skin and like glue. He like wrapped it around the front of his nose, and then he would like take that fish skin and go up his cheekbones up to like his hairline, and he would glue that there with spirit gum. I mean, the guy was crazy. He would just do crazy, crazy stuff. And that movie in particular, that face, it's just awesome. It's just classic horror. Love it. And he would do all of his shit as himself. That was the real wild part. You know, people now are divas. You know, they'd go in there and they're, oh, I'm the star of this movie, do my makeup while I sit here and talk the whole fucking time and yada yada. Not Lon. He's coming in, doing his own thing. And think about that. Sometimes he said he would do, 4 to 6 hours getting into makeup. That's crazy. Not only would he do his makeup himself for the 4 to 6 hours, this man would go and act all day, 10, 12 hours in this makeup. Picture having something covering your eye for 10, 12 hours and then taking it off. Yeah, talk about your equilibrium then. That's like wearing roller skates all day and, all night, taking them off, that first feeling, that's what he had to feel like all the time. He had so many roles where he did crazy, crazy things. And I'll go a little more in detail and tell you some more about his other films, but I can't say enough about Phantom. If you guys haven't seen it, just even look up some YouTube clips. You guys would definitely dig it. I mean, you really definitely would dig it. One of his early films that he did, it was a movie called The Penalty, and that came out in 1920. And if you were able to listen to my Bullets to Popcorn episode, this movie, The Penalty, Lon Chaney plays a veteran with no legs. And in this, he has they're like crazy caps, and they're caps at his knees, but they go all the way up, and they're like metal stumps, and he's swinging himself around on these crutches. And I also can't say enough about Lon. Let me say this. I can't say enough about Lon and how each of his roles, he looked completely different. I mean, you couldn't tell it was him. He became whoever the hell he was playing. I mean, to the max. I guess like a similar person people would say now to that would be like a Johnny Depp, where he looks different in each of his movies. But this, I mean, you couldn't even tell it was Lon Chaney in some of these. I mean, it was incredible. And The Penalty, that was one of his earlier ones. But like I said, right after World War One, you start to notice all these damn films come out. And it's wild. I mean, it's really cool, though. It's cool to see how some people expressed their discontent with just what just had transpired over the last 10 years before. Some people were using scary movies even way back then. So, Penalty comes out. He plays a man with no legs. And in this time, he would drop a couple, he was dropping a few normal movies too. He played in a movie called To Tell the Marines in 1926. Plays like the drill sergeant type. I mean, and it's nuts. He's like a John Wayne drill sergeant type. Everybody loves him. Ladies love him. He doesn't look like the Phantom of the Opera. He doesn't look like the damn Hunchback. He doesn't look like no limbless veteran. He looks different. I mean, it's really, really, it's a great film. So, one of the coolest, most iconic makeup jobs of Lon is London After Midnight. And that came out in 1927. And he plays this vampire. And the film, like a lot of the footage has been lost. They kind of recreated it with some still shots and kind of remastered it, but the original is completely gone, which, what the fuck? He looks so creepy. He's like, if you haven't seen it, he's almost like the Penguin from Batman with razor teeth. And the way he would prep for this, he had like these circle things that would go inside of his eye socket. So they would pop around his eye but sink into his eye socket. So it made his eyes look like they were bulging out. And if you just think about how fucking uncomfortable that is for a second, it just kind of freaks me out. Even as a person that puts contacts in and out, that shit freaks me out if I'm not concentrating hard enough. But to take a ring and pop it over your eye into the socket. And then he had these razor teeth, like I was saying, and he had these metal hook dentures that would hook around his teeth. No molding, no soft mouthpiece ordeal. No, he's got metal hooks holding his teeth. I mean, this man did it to the max. They said that he would, and not just this film, but Lon Chaney in general, he would help set the lights up for the set. He would help change into the new set. He loved movies. He wanted to make them believable because film was just brand new. He was one of the founding fathers of film, special effects, and horror. He's not just horror, but he's a character actor and one of the best. One of the coolest things that he did too, and this, you wouldn't be able to do this movie nowadays. I've heard quite a few people mention that, but he made a movie in 1927 called Mr. Wu, where he played a Chinese man, and he played different life stages of him. And in the movie, he played him as like a younger man, and he also played him as a grandfather. And the grandfather made, I don't think he did a good job in like a racist way. I really genuinely mean that, especially the younger version. I mean, he really looks like a Chinese man. He disguised his jawline through this movie to look more as the grandpa. I mean, it's really weird. If you were to put, especially because it's a black and white movie. So if you were to pull up movies, like, or pull up pictures from the movie, you'd be like, oh yeah, there's a Chinese guy. It's real. I mean, it's really cool to see. This man loved movies so much that he would just get so lost in these characters. And the facial mannerisms, his hands, his whole body, nothing was the same. I would love to know what he was really like behind the scenes. Who the hell was he? Was he a mix of all these people? I don't know. I don't know. So, he did another movie in 1927 as well, where he kind of did the exact opposite of what he did in the Penalty movie. In this movie, The Unknown, in 1927, he plays an armless clown. So he did Legless and Penalty, and in this movie, he has no arms. It's like the man got off on finding different ways to be disabled or hard ways of acting. He wanted to take jobs that were physically hard. I can't say you find that in many people. I guess you get crazy ass people like Tom Cruise now. But Tom Cruise movies are badass, man. He's nuts. That's cool. You know, I've never met the guy, so I can't say, but from what I've seen, the dude's nuts. But hey, man, he makes some good flicks. And I don't know if Lon Chaney was crazy like Tom Cruise, but he had that passion, that fire to say, man, I want to make such a good product. I don't want anybody to outdo it. And to think that he's doing all these movies and they're silent, to be such a big star at that time, for people to make, you know, oh, that guy, he's the best. They probably went to a movie, saw his name in the credits, and didn't know who the hell he was in most of the movies. Unless it said. But honestly, it's so weird. It just throws me off. It's kind of cool to me to see. I can't express enough that I get nuts delving deep into history and trying to figure out why the hell. You know, I like to do things chronologically. It's like a tick my brain has to figure out. I'm that way with music as well. I have to know. I have to just know certain things. And I just went back to the roots of everything. Figure out where the hell these movies started. So far, if you haven't known already, I hope that I've kind of plugged you in a little bit. World War One. That's kind of the big bang of all this. Then you get mans like Leonidas Frank Chaney, better known as Lon. So this man, not only was he a stage actor, he was a movie actor, he's a makeup artist, he directed some of his own films, he wrote some of his own films. Movies were so young then. They were so young then. Even people looking back now in the 70s and 80s, you know, your Wes Craven, those kind of, they'd be, oh, we were so young, we were just kids making movies, and it was just at the beginning. That wasn't at the beginning. Lon Chaney was doing it at the beginning. Because I'm sure there were people opposed to film back then. Whenever anything new comes out, people hate it. People love to hate things. It's just, people love to express their opinions. I guess with myself being in broadcasting or podcasting, I'm in the opinion business, but I never try to be unsupportive of somebody else's, even if I disagree. But man, Lon Chaney, it's hard for anybody to disagree that he's just the godfather. He's the godfather of character acting, of special effects. So some of his movies, I'm not saying that they're going to be easy to find, but they're definitely worth the watch. Even if you just go for some YouTube clips or look for them other ways, and if you can find some clips, maybe you're like, holy shit, this is a good movie, I need to buy it. Because I tell you, over the years, I've bought in so many monster movies and so many classic movies, ones that I haven't even seen before I bought, but there's so much hype around them that, okay, well, I'm going to buy this and check it out. And it's always worth it. It really is. So if you've ever been that way with the Lon Chaney movie, if you've ever seen, damn, what the hell is Hunchback of Notre Dame about? Phantom of the Opera, was that really scary? Check them out. You will not be disappointed. The cool part in Phantom of the Opera, when she pulls his mask off, you guys should really, that's when his acting, if you're going to look anything up, maybe that should be the scene you should look up. The amount of emotions he conveys in his face. Because at first he's shocked, then he's pissed, then he kind of falls into some sadness. He's upset that she's seen him, you know, that she saw him for who he was. And then it's just rage. So that's pretty cool. So look that up, check that out. And then also, maybe put on your thinking cap and your thinking shoes. Put on somebody else's shoes. And the shoes of somebody in the post-World War I era. What it would be like to see a bunch of crazy-ass people still battered from the war, half sewn together. People had, this was a cry for help. People needed a way to express themselves. And Lon Chaney, can't give him enough credit. Obviously, some people are familiar and some people are not, but his son was an actor as well. His real name was Creighton, but he eventually changed his name to Lon Chaney Jr. Wasn't a decision that he necessarily liked, but that's what I know him as. That's what everybody knows him as. And Lon Chaney Jr. is more recognizable. He did The Wolfman. And like the original black and white Wolfman. If you remember the man in that, that's Lon's son, Lon Chaney Jr. Excuse me. It had to be tough to be born. And they have to be a junior like that. To kind of find your way. But hey, if you're following up with Wolfman, Dad can't be too upset. Well, cool, man. I'm glad that you guys at least have the name in your head. I want you guys to do the research on your own, figure more out. And I'm going to talk to you guys more and more about all different kinds of people like this in the genre. All different kinds of weird parallels and things that I find that you maybe know or maybe do not know. I don't know, these things just run around in my brain too much. I have to conversate with somebody about them. So if you're a nerd like myself and you like the spooky shit, I encourage you to keep joining me for new episodes. So I think that I kind of like this role that I'm going on as far as starting from the beginning. I'm a chronological kind of guy, so I don't know. I think I have a few more things to build up to the current era. Man, if you guys, I don't know if you guys have seen my haunt character or what I look like, but the Phantom of the Opera is one of my main influences for that. The way I carry my face, the way I carry it. I can't say enough how big of an influence that Lon Chaney is. I really cannot. His last film he did was here's a weird thing. So, the only film he did with voice was the Unholy Three, and it was actually, he made the film early in his career, but it didn't have voice, so they redid the film with voice. And he had a great voice. He had the classic, "All right, now everybody, come round." I mean, he had a really cool voice. So it's kind of sad to see. It's kind of sad to see that it was his last movie. He only had one. But I guess it was kind of fitting because the world was changing. Film was already changing that fast. He did enough to launch it to where it was. He died pretty young. He died at 47 years old. Died at 47. He had a cold, chest complications, ended up turning to cancer. He didn't make it. But man, his legacy still lives on. On his tomb, where he's buried in Los Angeles, it has no name. Nothing's inscribed. But I can't think of anything more fitting for the man of 1,000 faces. So I can't urge you enough to go just look him up. You get bored, fall into that wormhole, check him out. You guys won't be disappointed. Alright, well, this is the Sloppy Horror Podcast. I appreciate you guys checking me out on this episode, Man of 1,000 Faces. Keep your ears out for my week in review coming up. Also, got things up on Spotify now, so if you're a Spotify user, you can find the Sloppy Horror Podcast there. For my iPhone users and iTunes users, should have some good luck coming up. Just waiting to get uploaded on there. So, trying to get to you guys on all platforms. So, once again, big thank you. This is the Sloppy Horror Podcast, and I'm out.